Hi, welcome to my channel JaberTime. Today I'm going to go over solve quadratic equations by completing the square, and I do have 5 examples. Let's get started. To complete the square for any quadratic expression of the form x to the second plus bx, follow the steps below. Find 1/2 of b, 1/2 of b, the coefficient of x, and that's when x squared has the coefficient 1. If it's not 1, we have to make it 1 by factoring out or dividing by. And I have an example for that. So we take 1/2 of b, we're going to square that and add that to x squared plus bx. And this is how it's going to look like in abstract form. Let's move on and see some practical examples with numbers. To solve quadratic equations also by completing the square, we need to be aware of the two formulas, the perfect square trinomials. Why they're called perfect square trinomials? Because the right hand side is perfect square and the left hand side is 3 terms trinomial. Now notice that if there is a minus right here, there is a minus right here. So we have something that is called a square plus something, and of course in our examples we're going to have x's. We're going to complete the square by looking for something here as a third term, such that this will be a perfect square. When I write these formulas, solving quadratic equations, I like to write them this way, because we're going from left to right. So if you have it a squared plus 2ab plus b squared, that will equal to a plus b all square. Kind of like we are focused on a squared to bring it down to a and b squared down to b. Let's see some numbers. So if I have x squared plus 6x plus 9, 9 will come down to 3 and x squared will come down to x. Let's double check. X to the second, 3 to the second will be 9, and the middle term is twice the product of a and b. This is my a and this is my b in my example. So if you do the product, that's 3x. Twice that will be 6x. For the minus one, if you have a minus here, that's going to be a minus. Let's see an example with numbers. 9x squared minus 12x plus 4 will be written as a perfect square as 3x, which comes down from 9x to the second. So this whole thing is like a square, and that is 3x. So if you take 3x, which is a, and you square it, you get back a square, and 3x all squared, that's 3x times 3x, which is 9x squared. 2 times 2 will give you 4. That's b times b will give you b squared. Here's the first example. So if you have x squared minus 4x minus 13 equals 0, the way to do it, we're going to add 13 to both sides because the focus is on the first two terms. By adding 13 to both sides, that's going to cancel and it's going to show on the right side as a positive. Then what we do, we look at b. b is -4. I like to do the side work right here and come back. So b is -4. We're going to take half of that, so divide by 2. And b over 2 means -4 over 2, which is -2. Then we're going to square that. By squaring b over 2, which is -2, that's going to be -2 to the second, which is +4. So we need to bring the positive 4 to both sides, right here and right here, to keep the equal sign valid and balanced. So now I added 4. This is like a magic number. That 4 will make the left-hand side belongs to the perfect square trinomials. I do have that 3 terms, and that will be a perfect square in a different look. So how to do it? Well, 13 plus 4 is 17. We're not worried about the right-hand side. Let's focus on the left-hand side. Remember, we have a minus, and that will show up right here. So we are on the left. That's the 3 terms. That's the 3 terms. Let's do it. X squared comes down to x, and 4 excuse me, comes down to 2. Now, we need to solve for x, so we need to get rid of the second to reach out and clean the left-hand side and leave x alone. Apply the square root to both sides. Don't forget the plus minus. Well, of course, square root of 17 is not a number that we're going to write in decimal, so we leave it. It's irrational. So that's going to cancel the square here on the left, and the right hand side it's plus minus square root of 17. Add 2 to both sides to leave x alone, and x equals 2 plus minus square root of 17. In case if you are asked to write them as x1 and x2, because that's 2 options, that will be x1, let's say the positive option, and the minus option will be the value for x2. So we're done with example number 1, and I have 5 examples, so 4 more to go. There are more practice, but they're not all the same. Here's the second one. The first step, we need to subtract 36 from both sides, and that will give me x squared minus 13x equals negative 36. Then we're gonna look at b and do the math right here. Take half of b and square that and come back and add it here and here to keep it balanced. b is negative 13. Half of that will stay as a fraction. Square that, and that is 169 over 4. We bring that to both sides. As you could see, the left hand side needs to be added, and we add them by using the common denominator 4. So negative 36 is like negative 36 over 1. We multiply by 4, multiply by 4, and that will give me negative 144 on top. Now I do have a common denominator, one fraction with a common denominator 4 with a 4, and 169 take away 144 is 25. Now this time when we take the square root, that's going to work here because 25 is a perfect square and 4 is a perfect square. So left hand side, we do have a minus. We need to write it down as a perfect square in this format. 169 over 4 comes down to 13 over 2, and x squared comes down to x. And the right hand side is, as we said, 25 over 4. Apply the square root to both sides. Don't forget the plus minus. Left hand side cancels, and I get x minus 13 over 2 equals plus minus. Square root of 25 is 5, square root of 4 is 2. We're going to add 13 over 2 to both sides. And now we have 13 over 2 plus minus 5 over 2. Notice that we do have a common denominator here, so we could combine them in one fraction. Now I have 2 options to write x1 and x2. Here's x1. Let's take the plus sign. 13 plus 5 over 2. That's 18 over 2, which is 9. Take the minus option for x2. 13 minus 5 is 8. 8 over 2 is 4. We're done with this example. Let's see one more. X squared minus x minus 3 equals 0. We're going to add 3 to both sides. And now I have x squared minus x equals 3. Let's go to the side and work on b. Take half of that and square it. b is the coefficient of x, and it's not shown here, but it's a minus 1 times x. So b is -1. Divide that by 2. It's -half. We don't write decimal. It's fine. Fractions are fine. So let's keep it that way. Let's square that. Well, to square -half, it's going to be positive 1/4. Let's go back and add it to the left and add it to the right. Now the right hand side, 3 plus 1/4, you could add it different ways. Of course, you could use a calculator, but let me show you how to do it quick. To add 3 plus 1/4, you could do the following. You could do a common denominator, which is 4. Multiply by 4, multiply by 4. After seeing this as a fraction, 3/1. That becomes 12/4 plus 1/4, which is 13/4. Or you could do this. You could write 3 plus 1/4 as 3 and 1/4. That's the same thing. The way I say it, instead of plus, I say and. 3 and 1/4. Now, to make this from improper fraction to a fraction, from mixed number to a fraction as an improper fraction, we multiply 3 times 4 and we add we add the result 3 times 4 to 1 and we put it on top. 3 times 4 is 12. Add 1, that's 13, 13/4. That's a quicker way if you want. Let's go back to the problem. So the right hand side is 13/4 and the left hand side is a perfect square with a minus in the middle. 1/4 comes down to half, x squared comes down to x, and that is 13/4. Take the square root of both sides. Don't forget the plus minus. Left hand side is x minus 1/2. Now, the square root of 13 is irrational. We keep it. The square root of 4 is 2, so we apply that, and that becomes 2 in the denominator. Add half to both sides, and when you do that, I leave x by itself, and I have half plus minus square root of 13 over 2. Same denominator. I could put them in one fraction, and I could have the two options. Here's the first option with a plus, and here's the second option with minus. Okay, next. This example is a little bit different because I do have 2x to the second, not just x to the second. But notice that I do have minus 8 and minus 24. They're all evens. It would be quick and easy to make it look like the previous examples by dividing all over all the terms, left and right, by 2. So let's do that. Divide by 2. That's x squared. That's minus 4x. That's minus 12. Of course, 0 over 2 is 0. We're going to move the 12 to the other side, or add 12 to both sides to cancel the negative 12. And now I have the following. Now let's look at b right there, and go to the side, take half of that, and square it. b is -4. Half of that will be -2. Square that. That will be positive 4. Put it back on the left and the right. Left hand side is ready, and right hand side is 16. 4 comes down to 2, x squared comes down to x, and don't forget the minus in the middle. Apply the square root to both sides. Left side becomes x minus 2, and right side plus minus square root of 16. 16 is a perfect square, and we could go on and simplify that to 4. So we have x minus 2 equals plus minus 4. Add 2 to both sides, and I get x equals 2 plus minus 4. Two options. Once we add, which is 6, and once we subtract, which is -2. Done. Next. This example is x to the second minus 2x plus 3 equals 0. We're going to subtract 3 from both sides. And now I have a negative number on the right side. That's different than the previous questions because you have a negative. Remember, later on we're going to apply the square root. So that's going to be different. Let's take b to the side and take half of that and square it. b is negative 2. Divide that by 2, negative 1. Square that, that's 1. Let's go back and add 1 here and add 1 here to keep the equal sign valid. Right hand side is negative 2 and left hand side is ready. So that's negative 2, and this one will go, 1 goes down to 1 and x squared goes down to x with a minus in between. Take the square root of both sides. Don't forget the plus minus, I keep saying it. Left hand side is x minus 1, and right hand side now I do have a square root of negative 2, but I want to rewrite it. I could write it as, forgot to say add 1. Let's add 1 to both sides first, and now I have the following. Now, square root of negative 2, I could break it down to square root of negative 1 times square root of 2. And this is what I mean. Now, what is square root of negative 1? It's an imaginary number. There's no such thing as a number you multiply by itself and you get negative 1. And that is I. So, replacing square root of negative 1 with I do have 1 plus minus I square root of 2. Two options. Once we take the plus and once we take the minus, and that should do it. I try my best not to go over 20 minutes, and it looks like it's about 17 minutes or 18 minutes. 5 examples, and one example is not going to be enough to complete the square, as you could see. Hopefully that was helpful, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you.
Thank you for watching. If you like this video, hit the like button and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Thank you.